Welcome back, guys. So let's talk about lights, specifically handheld flashlights. And as always, we're going to talk about them in the context of the armed prepared citizen. So I carry a flashlight every day. I have for many, many years. I've long been a surefire junkie. In fact, this L4 LumaMax has been my daily carry for many, many years. In fact, this is my second one. I wore the first one out. Surefire years ago graciously replaced it with a new one, and this one is on its second tail cap because I just use it every day, all the time. Great lights. However, got some complaints. Number one, technology's came a long way from where it was years ago. The battery life on this, to be quite honest, sucks. I usually go through, it takes two CR123 batteries. I usually go through a set of batteries just about monthly. And that's not turning it on and leaving it on. That's just simple momentary use doing different tasks. But I go through batteries fast. Comparatively speaking to other options that I'm going to show you in a minute, it's large and heavy. Now, let me pause there and throw this in because this is needed for context. When we're talking about lights, there's two separate contexts that we as armed prepared citizens have to keep in mind. Number one is your everyday, daily carry, daily use, normal life, grid up use. Second is going to be usage in a true crap hit the fan, grid down type situation, right? And I mention that because they are two different scenarios, and what you may find yourself wanting a light to do can be totally different in those two scenarios. I know that might sound odd to some of you, but bear with me. I stopped using this a little over a month ago, and I switched to something else. Now, this particular light, Surefire doesn't make anymore. The next closest thing they got to it runs around $200, give or take. I'll go ahead and tell you up front, my days of paying $200 for a flashlight are long over. My days of paying $100 for a flashlight are probably over. Especially when I can get what I've been using for the last month and a half, month and whatever. And some of you, this may not be a stranger to, but it's a little Streamlight. I don't know if you can, that'll focus in. It's the ProTac. This takes one CR123 battery or one AA battery. It'll run off either one. We'll just start with that point right there. That is hugely important to me in both a grid up and grid down scenario. It gives me options on what battery to put in there. Normally, I'll probably run the CR123s in there. They're a little smidge brighter. Have no problem running AA though. If the 123 goes dead and I'm off somewhere, it might be a lot easier to find a AA battery in a Jiffy store, gas station, or whatever than a CR123. At least I can throw a battery in here and have my light still going. In a grid down situation, it's probably going to be a lot easier to forage AA batteries than CR123. You've probably already got other things that take AA batteries, so having a lot of those on hand makes sense. They're also fairly affordable, comparatively speaking, to 123s. And if you're smart, you probably got a bunch of rechargeable AAs for other things. So it makes sense in that regards. Next, the reason I like this little light is it's much smaller than this one. It's lighter weight than this one. I can carry it bezel down, bezel up, either way it doesn't matter. This one is only bezel up, and if you see where the edge of the pocket clip's at, you got a lot of light sticking out of your pocket to get snagged and beat and hung on things. I can carry this one bezel down and look at the difference of what you've got exposed and sticking out, and it protects the lens. So that's another plus. Again, it's also lighter weight. Did I mention that? Yes, I did. Another point on this little light, it has a high mode, strobe, or a low mode. That, we're moving up the chain of priority here, is one of the best features about this little light. Excuse me just a second, okay? Probably 90% of my use, the low mode is all I've been using on this. The low mode does every utility task I could possibly want and greatly extends the battery life. High mode is plenty bright if I need a really bright light. But I've got options here to run either one. Probably the number one feature that I like about this light, instead of being in excess of $200, these are about $43 on Amazon, give or take, depending on the seller. $43 for a light that gives me lighter weight, more compactness, more versatility, longer battery life, and more versatility at a quarter of the cost, less than a quarter of the cost. I'll take every day. Now, wait, it's not as bright as this one. If you're going to have a light, you want all the lumens. No, I don't. Okay? That seems to be the cool kid fad thing to do, to say you got to have all the lumens, when reality is you don't have to have all the lumens. I can take this light in a home defense scenario and easily identify anybody or anything in my house, clearly light them up, clearly be able to see if they're a threat or not, who they are, identify them, etc., etc. It's more than bright enough on the high setting, and in fact, I can do it on the low setting. Additionally, I'm not messing up my own eyesight by it being, well, I'm not messing up my eyesight as bad in the dark because it's not as bright per se as this is. Not by much, but not quite. You don't have to, in my humble opinion, have all the lumens. What you need to do is be able to identify a target. If it accomplishes that, or identify a threat and target, then job done, right? That's grid up. Let's go grid down for a second. Grid down, probably 90% of what my use is going to be for a light like this is going to be navigation. If I have to enter an abandoned building, house, structure, whatever, and I want to be able to navigate through it, I want a low power light. I want to minimize as much as I can how much light is bleeding out of that structure, letting everybody and their brother know that I'm in there. So tactically that makes a lot of sense. You got a freaking 8,000 lumen light and you're going through a small house and light's bleeding out the windows and everywhere else. Well, good Lord, everybody's going to know where you're at. And if you're in a situation where you don't want people knowing where you're at, well, ta-da, there you go. I'm not going to be running around in a grid down situation trying to light up everybody that I come across. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. I'm not going to turn it on and leave it on and go walking around through a neighborhood, through the woods, whatever. That's how you get shot. Low light, quite honestly, is for CQB work, indoor work, law enforcement work, grid up work. In grid down, true bad times, lighting is going to be something that you use very rarely. I want you to think about that really hard. You've got to break out of your normalcy bias and think about that, how you're going to be using a light. We're going to touch on that further in another video. But I'm going to shut up for now. I just want to point out to you guys, you don't have to pay a couple $100s to get an effective, usable defensive light. And let me cover this before we close out. Yes, there is the potential with a good handheld light to temporarily blind a threat or an opponent. But let's be realistic. I'm not going to be focusing on trying to hit somebody right in the eyes with my light in that kind of scenario. I just want to light them up enough that I can see who they are, if they're a threat, and enough I can get my sights on them and shoot them if I need to. That's it. If they happen to get temporarily blinded by the brightness of the light, that's great, but I'm going to have to hit them right in the eyes to do that. And that's not what I'm going to be focused on. My focus is going to be on their hands, who they are, etc., etc. I want their body lit up. I'm not going to try to go. It's like trying to make a quick dynamic headshot on a moving target. That's a small target to try to hit and get somebody right in the eyes with that beam. It's just a little bit left or right, up or down, and it's not doing all the blinding effect that everybody wants to strive for. I know that makes me a pariah and throws me outside the box. I'm just saying. I want to see them, identify them. Are they a threat? Get my sights on them and hit them. That's my priorities. Yours may be different. Do what you got to do for you and don't worry about it. So, $43. Yep, this one after a month and a half, month and whatever I said now, this has been my new light. I will probably be getting more of these for all the reasons I mentioned. The cost allows me to have multiple backups and I can stash them around. Gives me versatility on the battery. Gives me versatility on the high and low beams. There's nothing I don't like about this light, I'll be honest. So, enough. Take care, guys. Be safe. Go train. Do it now. And I'll see you later.